The morning sun filtered through the grand windows of Clarence's house as Camilla sat at her mahogany desk, reviewing the final guest list for what would become the most talked-about royal event of the season. Her annual charity gala had grown from a modest gathering into one of London's most prestigious social occasions, drawing celebrities, politicians, and royals from across Europe. Camilla's fingers traced down the elegantly printed names, each one carefully considered and deliberately chosen. The Duchess of Cambridge's name was conspicuously absent from the cream-colored paper that bore the royal crest. It wasn't an oversight, it was a calculated decision that had been weeks in the making. The tension between Camilla and Kate had been simmering beneath the surface of royal protocol for months. What began as subtle disagreements about charitable priorities had evolved into something more personal, more complex. Camilla felt that Kate's growing influence was overshadowing her own carefully cultivated role within the family, while Kate sensed a deliberate attempt to marginalize her voice in royal affairs. At Kensington Palace, Kate was immersed in her morning routine with the children when her private secretary approached with the day's correspondence. Among the usual official documents and charitable requests was a notification that made her pause. Every major royal family member had received their invitation to Camilla's gala, every member except her. The realization hit Kate like a cold wave. She set down her teacup with trembling hands, her mind racing through possible explanations. Could it have been an administrative error? A postal mishap? But, deep down, she knew the truth was far more deliberate and painful. William noticed the change in his wife's demeanor immediately when he returned from his morning engagement. Kate sat in their private sitting room, staring out at the gardens, the uninvited invitation list still clutched in her hand. Her usual warmth had been replaced by a quiet devastation that broke his heart. "What's happened?" William asked, settling beside her on the sofa that had witnessed so many of their private conversations over the years. Kate handed him the papers without a word. As William read through the guest list, his jaw tightened with each familiar name that appeared: his father, his stepmother's friends, distant cousins, even some of Kate's own family members. Everyone except his wife. The silence that followed was deafening. William understood immediately that this wasn't about a simple oversight or scheduling conflict. This was about power, position, and the delicate balance that held their family together. Camilla had drawn a line in the sand, and Kate had been left standing on the wrong side of it. "She can't do this," William said finally, his voice barely controlled. "You're my wife. You're the future queen consort. This is unacceptable." Kate turned to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Maybe she's right, William. Maybe I don't belong in those circles. Maybe I never will." The defeat in her voice was what pushed William over the edge. He had watched his wife navigate the complexities of royal life with grace and determination for over a decade. She had faced criticism, adapted to protocols, and transformed herself while never losing the essence of who she was. To see her doubt her place in the family, their family, was something he couldn't tolerate. "You belong wherever I belong," William said firmly, taking her hands in his. "And, if you're not welcome at that gala, then neither am I." Kate protested, knowing the implications of what he was suggesting. Royal duties weren't optional, and family events carried weight far beyond personal preferences. But William's mind was already made up. He had spent his entire life watching protocol and tradition take precedence over human feelings. He had seen his mother struggle with similar dynamics, and he refused to let history repeat itself with his wife. The afternoon brought a flurry of phone calls as William's private secretary attempted to manage the situation diplomatically. Charles was in Scotland, Camilla was at her spa retreat, and the palace machinery was trying to find a solution that would save face for everyone involved. But William wasn't interested in diplomatic solutions or face-saving measures. He was interested in protecting his wife and making a statement about what kind of family he wanted to build and lead. The conversation with his father that evening was tense, filled with long pauses and careful words that barely concealed the anger on both sides. "This is bigger than a party, William," Charles said through the phone. "These events matter. They show unity, strength, continuity. And what does excluding Kate show?" William shot back. "What kind of unity is that?" As the days passed, the story began to leak despite the palace's best efforts to contain it. Royal correspondents started asking careful questions, society columnists began making subtle observations, and the public relations team worked overtime to craft statements that said nothing while appearing to address everything. Kate threw herself into her own charitable work with renewed intensity, visiting hospitals, schools, and community centers with a focus that surprised even her closest staff. She refused to appear wounded or affected by the snub, but those who knew her well could see the hurt she carried. William, meanwhile, made his own quiet preparations. He cancelled his schedule for the gala evening, citing family commitments. When pressed by his private secretary about the importance of the event, William's response was simple and final: "My family commitments are to my wife and children. Everything else is secondary." The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not only family bonds but also the very foundations of how the modern monarchy operated. The question was no longer whether William would attend the gala, it was whether his absence would be seen as a personal family matter or a public statement about the future of the royal family itself. As the evening of the gala approached, Kate found herself in the unusual position of having inadvertently become the center of a royal drama she never wanted to be part of. All she had ever wanted was to serve, to support her husband, and to raise their children with love and purpose. Now she was the focal point of a family crisis that threatened to overshadow everything she had worked to build. The irony wasn't lost on her that in trying to exclude her, Camilla had made her the most important person not in the room. Sometimes absence spoke louder than presence, and sometimes the most powerful statement was the one left unsaid. The golden invitation that had started it all lay forgotten on Kate's desk, a symbol of how quickly relationships could fracture and how the personal and public lives of royals could never truly be separated. The gala would go on, but it would be forever remembered not for who attended, but for who chose to stay away. The news of William's intended absence from the gala spread through royal circles like wildfire, creating ripple effects that reached far beyond the walls of any single palace. What had begun as a personal slight was rapidly transforming into a constitutional crisis that threatened to expose the fault lines running through the modern monarchy. At Highgrove, Charles paced the length of his study, the weight of kingship heavy on his shoulders. He had spent decades waiting to wear the crown, and now, barely into his reign, he faced a family crisis that could undermine everything he had worked to achieve. His wife's decision to exclude Kate had seemed reasonable to him at the time, a way to establish clear hierarchies and boundaries within their new court. Now it felt like a miscalculation that could cost him his son's support at a crucial moment. Camilla, meanwhile, remained resolute in her decision despite the mounting pressure. She understood the political implications, but she also understood something else, that sometimes a line had to be drawn. For too long, she had felt her role diminished by Kate's natural ease with the public and media. The younger woman's effortless charm and growing confidence had begun to overshadow Camilla's own careful cultivation of her position as queen consort. The gala was more than a charity event, it was Camilla's opportunity to establish herself as the undisputed first lady of the royal family. Having Kate there, inevitably drawing attention and admiration, would have defeated the purpose. It was a gamble, but one Camilla felt was necessary for her own survival within the institution. At Kensington Palace, Kate struggled with the aftermath of her exclusion in ways that surprised even her closest friends. She had faced public criticism before, endured years of scrutiny about everything from her family background to her fashion choices. But this felt different, this was rejection from within the family she had worked so hard to serve and honor. The children sensed the tension in their home, though they couldn't understand its source. George, now old enough to pick up on adult conversations, asked his mother why she seemed sad. Kate found herself struggling to explain a situation that seemed inexplicable even to her. How do you tell a child that sometimes families hurt each other, even when they're supposed to love and protect one another? William watched his wife's pain with growing anger that he struggled to contain during his public duties. At a veterans event, his usual easy rapport with attendees felt forced. During a school visit, his smiles seemed strained. The press began to notice, their trained eyes picking up on subtle changes in his demeanor that spoke volumes about the private turmoil affecting the royal family. The palace communications team found themselves in an impossible situation. They couldn't acknowledge the rift without confirming its existence, but they couldn't deny it entirely when the evidence was becoming increasingly obvious. Veteran royal correspondents began asking pointed questions about William's schedule, Kate's recent public appearances, and the notable absence of joint engagements between the Cambridges and the king and queen consort. Behind the scenes, desperate attempts were being made to find a face-saving solution. Could Kate be added to the guest list at the last minute? Could William be persuaded to attend alone, making some excuse for his wife's absence? Could the entire event be restructured to avoid the controversy altogether? But William had moved beyond the point where diplomatic solutions would satisfy him. This wasn't about a single event anymore, it was about respect, recognition, and the kind of family he wanted his children to see and inherit. Every suggestion from palace officials was met with polite but firm refusal. Kate, for her part, began to find her voice in ways that surprised everyone, including herself. In meetings with her private staff, she spoke with new clarity about her role and her expectations. She had spent years adapting herself to royal requirements, moderating her opinions, and deferring to others' judgment. The exclusion from the gala had awakened something in her that had long been dormant, a sense of her own worth and power. "I won't be invisible," she told her private secretary during a planning session for her upcoming engagements. "I won't pretend this didn't happen, and I won't make it easier for anyone to ignore or dismiss me." This new Kate began to emerge in her public appearances. Her speeches became more personal, more direct. Her interactions with the public showed a warmth and authenticity that seemed to resonate even more deeply than before. It was as if the attempt to sideline her had actually strengthened her connection to the very people she served. The media, meanwhile, began to pick up on the subtle signs of discord. Royal photographers noticed that recent official portraits showed the family members in carefully separate groupings. Society columnists observed the absence of the warm interactions between Kate and Camilla that had characterized earlier public events. Political commentators started speculating about what this might mean for the stability of the monarchy itself. Public opinion, when it began to crystallize, largely favored Kate. Social media erupted with support for the Princess of Wales, with many questioning why she would be excluded from any royal event. The palace's attempts to control the narrative were failing, and the story was taking on a life of its own. International royal watchers also took notice. European monarchies had faced their own challenges with family dynamics and succession planning. The idea that the future queen consort could be deliberately excluded from a major royal event sent shockwaves through royal circles across Europe. Charles found himself caught between his loyalty to his wife and his recognition that his son and daughter-in-law represented the future of the institution he now led. Phone calls between father and son became increasingly tense, with neither man willing to back down from their position. "This is about more than hurt feelings," William told his father during one particularly difficult conversation. "This is about what kind of monarchy we want to be. Do we want to be an institution that lifts people up or tears them down? Do we want to show the world that we can work together as a family, or that we're just another dysfunctional group fighting over power and position?" Charles felt the weight of his son's words, but he also felt the pressure from Camilla, who had made it clear that backing down now would undermine her authority and position permanently. The king found himself in the impossible position of having to choose between his heir and his wife, a choice that seemed to have no right answer. As the date of the gala approached, the tension within the royal family reached a breaking point. Staff members found themselves choosing sides, communications became strained, and the careful choreography that usually governed royal life began to break down. Kate spent the evening before the gala at home with her children, helping them with homework and reading bedtime stories. The normalcy of family life felt like a refuge from the storms swirling around her. But, even in these quiet moments, she couldn't escape the knowledge that tomorrow would bring a reckoning that could change everything. William spent that same evening in his study, reviewing his schedule for the following day. He had made his choice, and he felt at peace with it, but he also understood the magnitude of what he was about to do. By staying home with his wife while the rest of the royal family attended Camilla's gala, he would be making a statement that couldn't be taken back or explained away. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not only family bonds but also the very nature of modern monarchy. The question was no longer whether the gala would be successful, it was whether the royal family would emerge from this crisis stronger or forever changed by the divisions that had been exposed. The evening of Camilla's gala arrived with all the pageantry and glamour befitting a royal occasion. The ballroom at Clarence House glittered under crystal chandeliers, filled with the cream of British society, international dignitaries, and celebrities who had flown in specifically for the event. Yet despite the magnificent setting and distinguished guest list, there was an unmistakable tension in the air, the kind that comes when everyone knows something significant is about to unfold. Camilla stood at the entrance, resplendent in a midnight blue gown that had been specially designed for the occasion. She greeted each guest with practiced grace, but those who knew her well could detect the slight strain around her eyes. Every time the doors opened, there was a moment of anticipation. Would William change his mind at the last moment and arrive alone? Would Kate surprise everyone and appear despite the lack of invitation? But, as the evening progressed, it became clear that the Prince and Princess of Wales would not be attending. The absence was felt more keenly than any presence could have been. Conversations seemed to naturally turn to speculation about where William and Kate might be, what this meant for the family, and what it signified for the future of the monarchy. Diplomatic guests found themselves in the awkward position of commenting on royal family dynamics, while British society figures whispered among themselves about the implications of what they were witnessing. Charles arrived precisely on schedule, fulfilling his duty as both king and supportive husband. He moved through the crowd with his characteristic blend of warmth and formality, but observant guests noted that his usual effortless charm seemed somewhat forced. During his speech praising Camilla's charitable work, he made no mention of family unity or togetherness, themes that would normally feature prominently in such remarks. Meanwhile, at Adelaide Cottage, William and Kate were experiencing their own kind of evening. They had dismissed most of the staff, wanting privacy for what they both understood to be a significant moment in their marriage and their royal journey. The cottage, normally bustling with activity, felt peaceful and intimate in a way that contrasted sharply with the formal gathering taking place across London. Kate had spent considerable time choosing what to wear for their quiet evening at home. She settled on a simple but elegant dress that William had always admired, not because she needed to prove anything, but because she wanted to feel beautiful and confident in her own space, on her own terms. It was a small but meaningful act of self-affirmation. The children, blissfully unaware of the larger drama unfolding, were delighted to have both parents home for a rare quiet evening. They played board games, shared stories, and enjoyed the kind of family time that royal schedules often made difficult. For Kate, watching William laugh with their children, seeing him choose family over duty in this moment, was both healing and empowering. "Do you regret it?" Kate asked William as they sat together after the children had gone to bed, the cottage quiet around them. William considered the question carefully. "I regret that it was necessary," he said finally. "I regret that we've reached a point where this was the only way to make a statement. But I don't regret choosing you, choosing us, choosing to say that some things are more important than protocol." Back at the gala, the evening progressed with all the expected elements: champagne toasts, elegant dining, and speeches about charitable causes. But, underneath the surface glamour, something fundamental had shifted. The royal family's absence from their own family event had created a vacuum that no amount of pageantry could fill. Several guests, particularly those from international royal families, found themselves in the uncomfortable position of witnessing what appeared to be a family in crisis. The Spanish Queen, the Norwegian Crown Princess, and other royal guests had to navigate conversations carefully, avoiding any comments that might be seen as taking sides in what was clearly a serious family dispute. Social media, meanwhile, was exploding with commentary about the evening. Royal watchers and ordinary citizens alike were dissecting every available photo from the event, noting who was present and who was not. The hashtag #WhereIsKate began trending, not out of malice, but out of genuine confusion and concern about why the future queen consort would be absent from such a significant royal event. The international press had picked up the story as well. American television networks were running segments about the royal family drama, while European newspapers speculated about the stability of the British monarchy. The palace communications team worked frantically to manage the narrative, but the story had already taken on a momentum of its own. As the gala reached its climax, with Camilla delivering her keynote speech about the importance of charitable work and community service, there was an elephant in the room that everyone could sense but no one could directly acknowledge. The Queen Consort spoke eloquently about unity and working together for the greater good, but the irony of her words, given the circumstances that had led to this evening, was lost on no one. At Adelaide Cottage, William and Kate watched some of the live coverage on their private television. It felt surreal to see the event they were not attending, to watch family members and friends celebrating without them. But, rather than feeling excluded or diminished, they both experienced something unexpected, a sense of liberation. "We don't need their approval to be who we are," Kate said quietly, watching Camilla's speech. "We don't need to be included in everything to know our worth." William nodded, understanding that this evening had marked a turning point not just in family dynamics, but in how they saw themselves and their role within the institution. They were still committed to service, still dedicated to the crown, but they were also establishing boundaries about what they would and wouldn't accept in terms of treatment and respect. The evening also brought unexpected allies. Harry called from California, having seen the news coverage. Despite the complexities of his own relationship with the family, he expressed support for William's decision to stand with Kate. Other family members reached out privately, acknowledging the difficulty of the situation and expressing their own discomfort with how events had unfolded. As the gala finally drew to a close, guests departing into the London night, the true consequences of the evening were just beginning to be understood. Camilla had succeeded in hosting a successful charitable event that raised significant funds for important causes. But the cost of that success, in terms of family relationships and public perception, was becoming increasingly apparent. The photographs from the evening would be analyzed for days to come. Royal correspondents would write lengthy pieces about the significance of the absences. Constitutional experts would debate what this meant for the future of the monarchy. But, perhaps most importantly, the evening had established new dynamics within the royal family that would influence relationships and decisions for years to come. Charles returned to Clarence House that night knowing that something irreversible had occurred. His son had drawn a line in the sand, and crossed it publicly and deliberately. The king would need to decide how to respond, whether to bridge the gap that had opened up, or to allow it to widen further. For William and Kate, the evening ended with a quiet sense of resolution. They had faced a test of their partnership and their values, and they had emerged stronger and more united. The path forward would not be easy, but they had established that their marriage and their family would not be casualties of institutional politics or personal ambitions. The night of Camilla's gala would be remembered not for its glamour or its charitable success, but for the moment when the future of the monarchy chose love over protocol, family over duty, and personal integrity over institutional expectation. The reverberations of that choice would continue to shape the royal family for generations to come. The week following the gala brought a reckoning that reverberated through every level of the royal household. The immediate aftermath was chaos: endless meetings, crisis communications sessions, and desperate attempts to control a narrative that had already spiraled beyond the palace's ability to manage. But, beneath the surface turmoil, something more profound was taking shape, a fundamental restructuring of family relationships and power dynamics that would define the monarchy for decades to come. Charles spent the days after the gala in a state of deep reflection that those close to him hadn't seen since the early days of his kingship. The weight of his crown felt heavier than ever as he grappled with the reality that his family was fracturing in full view of the world. His private secretary found him one morning in his study at Highgrove, staring out at the gardens he had so lovingly cultivated over the years. "Sometimes I wonder if I understand the cost of everything and the value of nothing," Charles said quietly, not turning from the window. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from a man who had spent his entire life maintaining public composure. The king's relationship with Camilla had been tested in ways neither had anticipated. She maintained that her decision had been correct, that establishing clear hierarchies within the royal family was essential for institutional stability. But even she couldn't ignore the public relations disaster that had ensued, or the personal cost of seeing Charles struggle with the division between his loyalty to her and his love for his son. "Perhaps we underestimated the public's attachment to Kate," she admitted during one of their private conversations. It was as close to an acknowledgement of error as she would come, but Charles recognized it as significant. William, meanwhile, had entered a new phase of his royal life, one defined by independence and self-determination rather than deference to established hierarchy. The days following his absence from the gala brought a flood of support from unexpected quarters. Veterans organizations praised his loyalty to his wife. Women's groups celebrated his stand against what they saw as an attempt to diminish Kate's role. Young people across the Commonwealth expressed admiration for a royal who chose love over protocol. The prince found himself in the unusual position of having gained popular support by defying royal convention. His public appearances in the week following the gala were marked by unprecedented enthusiasm from crowds who seemed to view him not just as a future king, but as a man who had stood up for his principles and his family. Kate's transformation during this period was perhaps the most remarkable of all. The woman who had once worried about fitting in, about saying the right thing and following every protocol perfectly, discovered a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Her first public appearance after the gala was at a children's hospital, and staff noted immediately that something had changed. She seemed more present, more herself, one nurse observed. Like she wasn't performing anymore, but just being. The hospital visit became a masterclass in authentic royal engagement. Kate spent genuine time with patients and families, shared stories about her own children, and showed an emotional openness that resonated deeply with everyone she met. The photographs from that day showed a woman comfortable in her own skin in a way she had never been before. The public response to Kate's new approach was overwhelmingly positive. Letters poured into Kensington Palace from people who felt they had seen the real Princess of Wales for the first time. Social media was filled with comments about her authenticity and warmth. Even some of the harshest royal critics found themselves reassessing their opinions of her. The children, too, were affected by the changes in their parents. George, Charlotte, and Louis sensed the new dynamic in their home, the way their parents seemed more relaxed, more united, more present. Family dinners became longer and more frequent. Weekend activities focused more on genuine family time rather than official obligations. "Mummy seems happier," Charlotte observed to her nanny with the innocent perceptiveness of childhood. It was a simple statement that captured a complex transformation. The broader royal family struggled to navigate the new reality. Anne, the Princess Royal, characteristically cut through the diplomatic niceties during a family gathering. "We've made a mess of this," she said bluntly. And, pretending otherwise won't fix it. Her words sparked the first honest family conversation about the situation that had been allowed to occur. Charles, William, and other family members sat down for what palace insiders described as a clearing of the air that was long overdue. No immediate solutions emerged, but the foundation for eventual reconciliation was laid. Public opinion polls conducted in the weeks following the gala showed interesting results. While the royal family as a whole maintained strong approval ratings, there was a notable shift in individual popularity. William and Kate's ratings reached new heights, while Camilla's dropped significantly. More tellingly, when asked about the future of the monarchy, respondents increasingly expressed confidence in William's eventual reign and Kate's role as future queen consort. International reaction was mixed but largely sympathetic to William and Kate's position. Commonwealth realms watched closely, with several prime ministers privately expressing concern about family unity. European royal families, many of which had faced their own modernization challenges, offered quiet support and advice through diplomatic channels. The media coverage evolved from sensationalism to more thoughtful analysis of what the events meant for the monarchy's future. Constitutional experts debated whether William's actions represented a dangerous precedent or a necessary evolution in royal behavior. Some argued that his willingness to put family before duty showed weakness. Others contended that it demonstrated the kind of authentic leadership the monarchy needed to remain relevant. Behind the scenes, palace staff found themselves adapting to new realities. The traditional clear hierarchies that had governed royal household operations became more complicated when family relationships were strained. Communication between different royal offices became more formal, more careful, and ultimately less effective. As autumn progressed into winter, a gradual thaw began to emerge. It started with small gestures, Charles including Kate in official correspondence where she might have been overlooked before, William accepting invitations to events where his father would be present, Camilla making subtle acknowledgments of Kate's work in her own public statements. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during a family crisis that had nothing to do with their disputes. When Princess Anne suffered a minor riding accident, the family's natural instinct to come together overrode their personal grievances. William and Kate's immediate presence at the hospital, their genuine concern for Anne's well-being, and their gracious interactions with Charles and Camilla reminded everyone of the bonds that transcended their differences. Family is what matters in the end, Anne said from her hospital bed, looking pointedly at each of them. The rest is just politics. The Christmas season brought opportunities for reconciliation that hadn't existed before. The family's traditional Christmas gathering at Sandringham took on new significance as a chance to demonstrate unity and healing. Careful choreography ensured that William and Kate were prominently featured in Christmas photographs and activities, sending a clear message about their central role in the family's future. Kate's Christmas speech, delivered as part of her role in the family's charitable Christmas broadcast, was widely praised for its sincerity and warmth. She spoke about family, forgiveness, and the importance of standing together through difficult times. Those who knew the family's recent history understood the deeper meaning of her words. The gala incident had ultimately served as a catalyst for positive change within the royal family. It had forced honest conversations that were long overdue, established new boundaries and expectations, and ultimately strengthened the bonds between William and Kate while clarifying their role within the larger institution. Looking back, historians would likely mark the evening of Camilla's gala as a turning point, not because of what happened, but because of what was revealed. The future of the monarchy lay not in rigid adherence to hierarchy and protocol, but in the authentic relationships and genuine service that William and Kate represented. The couple's quiet evening at home while the gala proceeded without them had been more than an act of protest, it had been a declaration of values that would guide their eventual reign. They had chosen each other, chosen their family, and chosen authenticity over performance. In doing so, they had shown the monarchy a path forward that honored tradition while embracing the human connections that gave institutional service its meaning. As winter gave way to spring, the royal family emerged from their crisis changed but not broken, tested but ultimately strengthened by the knowledge that they could weather storms and find their way back to each other. The future looked brighter for having weathered the darkness, and the monarchy looked more human for having shown its capacity for growth and forgiveness.